Sounding the alarm on the fading power of evangelical Christianity in America. A recent study from Arizona Christian University reveals that only 10% of American adults identify as evangelical, a figure significantly lower than previous estimates. It also shows those who do identify as Christian often embracing a watered-down version of their faith. A growing trend is leading many evangelicals to abandon traditional beliefs in favor of a blended religious worldview. So joining us to break it all down is Dr. George Barna with the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University. He is also the founder of research company Barna Group. Dr. Barna, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, some pretty telling research. What's driving this decline of evangelicalism?
Well, the culture. I mean, if you look at what's happening to people who consider themselves to be Christian around the country, the culture is affecting them more than their faith is affecting them. When we look at the impact of their churches, it tends to be rather minimal. Part of that is due to the fact that their churches don't really try to encourage people who want to be disciples of Jesus, who want to follow biblical principles, to go out and influence the culture. So the culture has taken that vacuum and filled it.
Well, before I stray from this study, in particular, what are some things that stood out to you the most, that are most telling, that our viewers should know about?
Well, there are a lot fewer evangelicals theologically defined rather than self-identified than is typically reported. That's significant. Secondly, those theologically defined evangelicals are no more likely than anybody else in the nation to pay attention to news and activity related to politics and government. They're no more likely to vote than other people are. They're actually less likely to engage people who believe different than them politically in any kind of conversation. They're conservative on most issues, but they don't really get activated politically. So this is kind of a change from what we've heard about and expected of evangelicals. Of course, liberal media try to stir people up, try to stir up fear about conservatives. But if you take an objective look at the data, those individuals, while they may be conservative and they may lean Christian, they're not really applying their faith to what's going on in the world as often as we would have hoped.
Dr. Barna, what does the future hold for evangelical Christianity?
Well, I think there's a tremendous opportunity for growth, but what we're seeing right now is that because the culture is affecting evangelicals more than evangelicals are affecting the culture, there's got to be a change in terms of how we're developing people's faith. We've got to start a lot younger, working with children, literally, because that's when a person's worldview develops. What we know right now is that 2/3 of theologically defined evangelicals do not possess a biblical worldview.
Yeah.
And so unless that changes, the trend is for fewer and fewer evangelicals to embrace biblical Christianity in fullness. That's a great challenge, but it's also a great opportunity.
Well, Christians are the largest voting demographic in America, but a third of them don't actively participate in elections. So how would this shape the political landscape?
Well, it gives people with unbiblical ideas an increasing opportunity to shape the laws and the policies of this nation. So Christians may talk about how they believe life, for instance, is critical and that they're pro-life. But unless they're going to act on behalf of that kind of a stance, we're going to see increasingly that that becomes the minority perspective.
Dr. George Barna, also always an honor to speak with you. Thank you for joining us on Faith Nation.